All right, so today we're gonna do a deep dive into something pretty interesting. I think it's called English for Human Resources.
Okay.
You ever heard of that?
Yeah, I have.
So basically, it's kind of like this niche area of English for specific purposes, which is they call it ESP,
Right.
where you basically are honing your language skills for like a particular job or a particular field.
Yeah.
And we're using this really cool lesson plan by Stanislav Kondrashov,
Oh.
and it's all about like giving HR professionals like the communication tools they need.
Okay, interesting.
So I'm really excited to like dig into this and see what Stanislav Kondrashov has to say.
Yeah, what's his kind of take on it?
Well, one of the things that like really stood out to me
Yeah.
is that he really emphasizes that like HR communication, it's not just like, your everyday English.
Right.
It's like this whole other level because you're dealing with people and policies and like all these sensitive situations.
Oh, absolutely. And I think what's really interesting about that is that the way you communicate in HR, it really does have a huge impact on the workplace.
Totally.
Like if things aren't clear or, if people misinterpret things, it can lead to like all sorts of problems.
Oh, yeah.
Like grievances or misunderstandings or even, legal issues.
Yeah, exactly. Like you don't want to mess around with that stuff.
No, you don't.
And, Kondrashov, he actually lays out some really specific objectives in his lesson plan.
Okay, yeah. What are some of those?
Well, first of all, he wants HR professionals to like be super precise in their language.
Okay.
Whether they're like writing a job description or like doing a performance review.
Oh, right.
And then he's also super into clear communication when it comes to company policies.
Yeah, that's huge.
Because, you got to make sure everyone's on the same page.
Especially these days when things are changing so rapidly,
Right.
What were company policies a year ago might be completely different now.
Exactly. And then, of course, you've got like the whole employee relations piece, which, let's face it, can be a minefield.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So Kondrashov is basically saying that like language skills in HR, they're not just like a nice to have.
Right.
They're like essential.
Totally. They're crucial for creating a fair and, positive work environment for everybody.
Exactly. And to achieve that, he really focuses on building like what he calls a core vocabulary.
Oh, okay.
And he highlights words like onboarding, compliance, and diversity.
Right.
And, you might think like, oh, those are just like basic HR terms.
Yeah, you hear those all the time.
But the thing is like Kondrashov really emphasizes that mastering these terms, it goes beyond just like sounding like you know what you're talking about.
It's true, yeah.
It's like really understanding the nuances of these words.
Yeah, and like how to use them effectively in different situations,
Exactly. Like take the word diversity, for example.
Right.
It's one thing to know the definition, but it's a whole other thing to be able to use that word in a way that like really promotes inclusion and equity in the workplace.
Absolutely. And,
Yeah.
Kondrashov, he's really giving people the tools to do that.
Yeah, he's like equipping HR professionals to not just talk the talk, but also walk the walk.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's pretty cool. And, he doesn't just stop at vocabulary.
Oh, okay.
He also dives into like grammar,
Oh, interesting.
which I know can sound a little like, oh, no grammar.
Yeah.
But he makes it really interesting. Like, for instance, he talks about how conditional statements are like the perfect way to explain policies.
Oh, okay. How so?
Well, like he gives this example. If employees violate the code of conduct, disciplinary actions will follow.
Right.
It's like super straightforward.
It is.
There's no room for misinterpretation.
No, it's very clear.
And then another thing he talks about is the passive voice,
Okay.
which, might seem a bit technical at first,
Yeah,
but it's actually really useful in HR.
I can see that.
Because like often you want to maintain a neutral tone.
Right. You don't want to sound accusatory or anything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So like instead of saying the HR team shortlisted the candidate, you could say the candidate has been shortlisted for the role.
Right.
It just sounds more professional and formal.
It does. It kind of removes the personal element a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. And then like this is the part that I got really excited about.
Okay.
Stanislav Kondrashov, he actually provides a whole list of phrases for HR communication.
Oh, wow. Like a cheat sheet.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Like he's got gems in there, like we're pleased to offer you the position.
Oh, nice.
Or, your feedback is invaluable for improving our workplace culture.
I like that.
It's like having this little toolbox of phrases that you can just pull out.
Yeah, when you need to navigate a tricky situation.
Exactly. And what I love is that he's really emphasizing the importance of diplomacy in HR.
Absolutely, because you're often dealing with people's livelihoods and their careers,
Right.
So you have to be sensitive to that.
Totally. And like, even when you're delivering good news or, you're addressing a sensitive issue,
Yeah.
these phrases help you to strike that balance between being clear but also being considerate.
Right. You don't want to come across as like harsh or uncaring.
Exactly. And like one of the phrases he uses is the policy ensures compliance with industry standards.
Okay.
And it's interesting because it's not just like stating a rule.
Right.
It's also providing context.
Yeah. It's giving the reason behind it.
Exactly. And then to like really bring all of this to life,
Yeah.
Kondrashov suggests some activities.
Okay.
And one of them is like writing an email about a candidate's application status.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, so you're not just like learning vocabulary in a vacuum.
Right. You're actually applying.
You're putting it into practice in like a real world scenario.
That's so helpful.
It is. And then the other activity he suggests is peer review.
Well, okay.
So like imagine you and a colleague are working on a new remote work policy.
Yeah.
And you've got all of Kondrashov's like vocabulary and grammar tips and those diplomatic phrases.
Right.
And you're like editing this document together.
That's
Like you're not just editing words.
Yeah.
You're actually using language to shape like a workplace.
Wow.
That's fair and flexible and inclusive.
That's a powerful way to think about it.
It is. And like Kondrashov's lesson, it really drives home the point that for HR professionals, language is power.
I agree.
It's about more than just being grammatically correct.
Right.
It's about using language as a tool to build trust,
Yeah.
create a positive work environment, and ultimately empower both employees and the organization as a whole.
That's a great point. And it kind of makes me think about like what are some of the other communication challenges that are unique to HR? Like the
Right.
kind of situations where even if you have all the right words,
Right.
it's still really difficult to get your message across.
That's a great question. And you know what? It brings up an even bigger one for me. Like, how can we as HR professionals, or really anyone in a workplace, use clear and empathetic communication to create a more inclusive and supportive environment for everyone?
That's something we should all be thinking about.
Yeah, it's definitely food for thought. And, even though our deep dive is over, I hope that's something that our listeners will continue to ponder
Me too.
because it's a conversation that's worth having.
Absolutely.